Mr. Bison Clips! Mr. Bison Clips! Mr. Bison Clips! Mr. Bison Clips!
So today we're going to explore John Donne's The Sun Rising, which is slightly different from some of the other poems we've studied by Donne, though at the same time we certainly feel his presence through this poem very well. It does have the same humorous, bombastic, flamboyant tone that we've kind of gotten used to when we've looked at Donne's poems. He's certainly not respectful towards the sun in this case, and sort of breaks the conventional reverent way that other Renaissance poets might have talked about the sun if they were to personify it. If we start saying a few words about the form of the poem, it's kind of interesting. It is slightly unusual, but it's still highly formalized. If you look at line 1, 5, and 6 of each stanza, they're all iambic tetrameter. And the second line, I think it's only the second line, is iambic diameter. And then beyond that, it is predominantly iambic pentameter that rules the poem. However, there are some interesting examples of distinct breaks from these rules completely. For instance, there's a sponde and a couple of trochaic lines as well. So I think that's one thing you might want to, when you're having a closer look at on your own, just have a look at the breaks and see why does he mess up. He sets up a system here and then he moves away from that system. What might his purpose be in doing that? So if we start looking at the content, it's we get the same stands of apostrophe, the same apostrophic stands that we've seen in some of the other poems. So he's speaking to the sun as a person, and in a quite an aggressive manner, really. He's scolding the sun essentially for interrupting the peaceful, quiet, dark time that he's having with his mistress. And he calls the sun a saucy, pedantic wretch. And instead he said, we lovers shouldn't have to run to your seasons. We are beyond that. So essentially he's asking, is that microcosm that we live in, that lovers are part of, isn't that more important than this macrocosm that is the world? So instead of bothering us, because we are lovers, which are in Donne's opinion is superior to normal people, ordinary people. So instead he wants the sun to go away and chide some late schoolboys or some sour apprentices, or go and tell the court's huntsmen that the king will ride, or even talk to the country ants or to go and harvest their offices. But don't try to dictate the lives of the lovers, because we don't know any season or any climate or hours, days or months. Those things are just rags of time, and we are above time. We're not mundane like these other things. So straight away setting up the tone of this is, or not the tone, but telling us what the purpose of the whole poem is. It's to put the sun back in his place. We then get this sense, he then talks to the sun about the sun's sense of self, and the fact that essentially the sun has an inflated sense of self, and his ego is too big for him. You think that your beams are so reverent and strong, but why should you think that when I could eclipse it just by a wink of my eye? So just by closing my eyes, I could take away all your power, and you wouldn't be able to shine on me at all. And I would do that, except that I don't want to lose the sight of my beloved. So it's quite a romantic approach here in terms of, it's a very cute gesture that I don't want to waste any time of looking at her. And then he takes that even further and says, if you haven't been blinded by her eyes, then come and have another look tomorrow. So essentially, rather than the sun blinding the girl, because of the radiance and the splendor of the girl, she's likely to blind the sun. So, but if that hasn't occurred, if you can still see tomorrow, then come back and we'll have a look around the world first and see where the Indias of spice and mines, or where we find the wealth of the world, the spices and the mines, whether they're still where they used to be, or where you left them, or if they all lie here with me. So essentially, if all the riches of the world are now brought into this bed. As for those kings with whom thou sawest yesterday, and thou shalt hear, all here in one bed lay. So not only is this containing all the wealth of the world, it's also containing all the kings of the world. So the two of them together, the union that they comprise, is essentially the essence of everything in this world. And we take that one step further in the third stanza, where he makes this more explicit. She's all states and all princes I, nothing else is. Princes do but play us. Compared to this, all honours mimic and all wealth alchemy. So we get three images here of imitation, the playing, the mimicking, and the alchemy, none of which are real. It's all about magic and trying to fraudulently present something as something else. And then there's an attempt here at turning this for the sun into something positive. Thou, son, art half as happy as we. So obviously he's not going to be as happy as they, because they are ultimate, the ultimate happiness. But you're going to be half as happy as we, because the world is thus contracted. So because the whole world is now in this bed, and because you're getting old and tired, you don't have to be running around the world and warm everything in your duties, because if you just warm us, you are warming the world, because we are everything, as we saw up here. So shine here on us, and thou art everywhere. This bed thy centre is, these walls thy sphere. So again, we get this common image of Donne's of the sphere, the perfect sphere representing perfection, and that sort of holistic view of everything. So for Thursday's lesson, as you annotate and think about this poem a bit further, I'd like you to consider these three aspects of the poem. How does this poem relate to the other Donne poems that we have looked at, in terms of, I guess, particularly look at things like tone, the speaker, the characters, maybe the use of conceits, and also the images maybe of the orb, and those sort of things, and the importance of the relation, I guess, between ethereal love and more carnal knowledge and carnal pleasures, and how the two link together. And then you might also want to look at some images and see how could you potentially connect the imagery in this poem, so particularly the conceit of the bed as the world, but also the other images, to the imagery in the other poems, so poems by Dickinson, Heaney and Harwood, and see if you can make any connections there. And lastly, look at the form again, and the meter particularly, but also the rhyme scheme, and see how does the form correlate to the meaning of the poem. So have a look at those three, and I shall see you in class on Thursday.